Hey everyone, it's Kristan Hawkins. Welcome to this new episode of Explicitly Pro-Life Podcast. And today we're talking about abortion politicians, pop culture, and propaganda. I know what you're thinking. Kristan knows all about pop culture, but I really don't. So I have brought on a very special guest. I'm super excited to have her on because we have a lot to talk about what's going on in pop culture and Hollywood. As you all know, Planned Parenthood, they are sucking up big time to Hollywood. In fact, they have like a full-time office and team dedicated to helping Hollywood producers and directors talk about abortion in shows and movies. They've really gotten on this. And I really feel like this is somewhere the pro-life movement's lacking a little bit. So I have brought on Alex Clark. Welcome, Alex. Alex is the host of Pop Politics from Turning Point USA. Alex, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became pro-life.
Hi. Well, first of all, I'm so excited to be here because I am the biggest fan of you ever. I started watching over the summer. Well, actually, I feel like it was at the beginning of quarantine even that I discovered the videos of you talking on college campuses, and I would binge for hours. I would just watch all of your speaking engagements, and I was just loving it. And then I found this podcast, and I am so busy during the day, and I barely have time to do anything, and I'm writing scripts for my show, Politics with Turning Point USA and everything. And that takes a lot of time during the night. But I was so excited about your podcast and loved it so much that I would while I was even just having the short amount of time before I fell asleep, I would be like, I have to try to stay awake like 30 minutes to listen to one more podcast because I loved it. So Kristan, seriously obsessed with Explicitly Pro-Life and everything you're doing.
I'm really sorry that you had to listen to my voice that long. I really apologize.
Thank you.
Explain to everybody where they can get your show before, because I'm going to forget to ask you this later. So
yeah,
it's really cool because it's like conservative, but it's like pop culture and like it meshes the two, and I think that's so unique and so needed. So where can people like follow it?
Thank you. I have this show called Politics, which the title of itself is pop culture and politics combined. Yep. And so Politics is a conservative take on pop culture or entertainment news. Imagine this. If E! News and Fox News had a baby, that's Politics. That's exactly how I describe it. And it's a short daily show. It's around 10 minutes, Monday through Friday. We post it 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific on Instagram. So you can follow us at Politics. And then you can also, if you want to, it's a visual show, so it's really fun. We have all these funny clips, and it's very pink, as you can tell here in my background. But it's very pink and very fun. And you can also listen to it. We are on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all podcasting platforms. If you want to just listen, search for Politics. But I just break down the top pop culture or entertainment news stories of the day. And I just tell you the pop culture deal without the propaganda is what I say, the leftist propaganda. And I'm openly conservative on the show. Turning Point USA is a openly conservative organization. And so it's just a cotton candy way of introducing conservatism and conservative ideas to apolitical young women, I would say, or young women even on the left. And then, of course, young women on the right who just feel like they've never had a home to love all things pop culture before. Because I feel like on the right, we don't do a really good job of covering pop culture and just kind of berate it constantly.
Yeah, right,
but no one on the right is fans of it. And I am a huge fan of all things like celeb gossip and stuff.
Yeah, you keep me on my toes with pop culture because I'm in like homeschooling mom mode. So I don't get out much. And so I'm like, oh, okay, here's my little daily update from Alex.
And it's short.
But yeah, and I love that you're doing this because you're right. I think that conservatives in general, that we kind of, poo-poo Hollywood, like it's a cesspool, it's evil, let's not pay attention to it. Which, yeah, it is. But we have to pay attention to it because we know they are cultural drivers, and especially young people look, if you look at Hollywood markets to our target audience, and we've got to get into that world, and we have to see it. I think we have to see it more as a mission field than, I've been advocating for years. I think the Republican Party should take the most attractive men and women they have and stick them right in LA and do what the Church of Scientology did, open up a little RNC headquarters and just pay them to go to parties and like mingle and be like, hey, we're Republicans, we're cool, see? And like just start having conversations, because I think a lot of
influencer movement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like we were just talking about this in a previous episode of the podcast of there's a huge problem with the perception of the pro-life movement and who pro-lifers are. And there's certain people that, if I tell them I'm pro-life, that's not going to help the pro-life cause. I've got to have a liberal atheist or vegan tell them they're pro-life, and then they might actually listen to what they have to say. And so I think that's important. And so, and you think about a bad brand. A lot of times when you look at the polls, the pro-life movement actually has a better brand than the Republican Party. Like that actually is a harder brand to overcome. So I love what you're doing, and thank you for doing this little mission field.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just feel like, not everyone is going to want to listen to you talk politics, right? Not everybody's going to be open to hearing about what conservatism is. What do we really believe in all these different things? But if I start the conversation by being like, oh my gosh, did you hear what Kylie Jenner did? If I start that, like, everyone is very disarmed when you start the conversation like that. And then I can be like, yeah, she said this. What do you think about it? They tell you. And then I say, well, here's what I think about it as a conservative. And that's what all of politics is. And I do that with pro-life stuff too. So, personally, I am pro-life. And so I try to sprinkle a lot of that stuff into politics as well. And on the politics account. And some of our biggest and most viewed videos that we've done, episodes that we've done, have been where I've broken down pro-abortion ideas, and especially with like all this Kanye stuff coming out, that's been prime for me.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, the Kanye West, the conversion of Kanye West. We post something about Kanye West on our Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, and for that will be the top post of the week. Nothing that sometimes Donald Trump will beat out Kanye West, but he has such a powerful platform and such a big megaphone, essentially, when it comes to abortion. Now he's talking openly about Planned Parenthood's racism. And, what do you kind of think what should we do with Kanye? Because I think there's a lot of conservatives that are like, oh, we should stay away from Kanye. He has these weird tweets, and he's weird, and he said this in the past. Do you think we should embrace that and his pro-life tweets and what he said that's openly pro-life, and should we continue to promote it?
Well, even if somebody does say things that may not be 100% accurate all the time, it doesn't mean that every single thing that they ever say is not ever accurate. When he did Nick Cannon's podcast recently,
yes,
and they started talking about abortion in Black communities, abortion in minority communities, abortion clinics, where they're placed, how it affects the Black community, it was so interesting to me because Nick was asking him questions, started asking him hard-hitting questions, and I love that Kanye pulled out his phone. He's like, dun, da, 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 and then he was like, let me give you the facts. And I was like, dude, that is what every single pro-life person should do, is just have their phone ready and be ready to lay out the facts. And he was prepared, and he was like, here's what the stats tell us. And it was interesting to me because I was very prepared watching that exchange with them, with Nick Cannon and Kanye, for Nick to push back and be like, I don't know that I believe all that, but he would finish Kanye's sentences. So he was like, so Nick would be like, yeah, it's genocide. And I was like, whoa.
Well, do you know Nick Cannon had a pro-life song, right?
Who did?
Nick Cannon.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I'm aging myself, but when Nick Cannon was like new and just kind of on the scene, he actually had an openly pro-life rap song. It was like a big deal for the pro-life movement.
So interesting. Yeah, and he's been embroiled in
done anything. He hasn't done anything about it. Like, I remember we were all so excited, and then like every white pro-lifer in the country was like listening to rap for like 2 weeks, looking for like other pro-life songs. But yeah, no, it was huge. But then he stopped talking about it completely. So when he had Kanye on, like I know, unless his, I was like, well, I hope his views haven't changed, and they clearly haven't changed when it comes to.
And I thought that was so important. What I love about Kanye, and when conservatives talk about like, well, he's done this, it's like, okay, but what's really interesting about him, especially in the culture we're living in, he transcends cancel culture. Like he's been able to avoid it. This guy is like a cat, okay? He's got 9 lives. Every single time the media tries to destroy him for, wearing a MAGA hat, for doing that, for being pro-life, for saying that he, cried, crying about, Kim almost aborting Northwest, their daughter, like all of these different things that have happened, they always try to come after him, and he always comes back. I love it so much. And so that should be so powerful and so inspiring to, of course, just us peasants here in the pro-life community, like us normal people, the normies, but also to other celebrities who are who are in the closet with their pro-life views, because they have been terrified, I'm sure, to speak out in Hollywood about being pro-life. They see what's happening to Kanye, they're like, whoa, like, wait, he's still working, he's still designing, he's still coming out music, like nothing's happening to him. Like, could I maybe come out? And so that is so important.
That is probably the best argument we have for why we should continue to say Kanye said this and can promote that, because you're right. Like there's like a little underground, I think they call it like the Lincoln Club or whatever in Hollywood. It's like the Hollywood conservatives, and they all kind of, I think Gary Sinise and all those guys are the usual suspects, but it's like this secret club, and you're not.
Oh, those exist.
Yeah, but oh my gosh, Republicans, conservatives actually exist. But I think you're right that they see that, oh wow, Kanye West his net worth hasn't decreased, and he's making his products, and people are still buying them after coming out saying he's pro-life.
And I get asked this question all the time from Turning Point USA students or followers of politics. I call them cute conservatives. Cute conservatives will message me and they'll say, Alex, I want to talk about being conservative. I want to talk about being pro-life, but I'm scared. What if, somebody on my friends list like tries to debate me in the comments? What if they unfriend me? What if I lose followers? I'm like, so what? That's the point. They're like, what if people try to cancel me? I'm like, let them try to cancel you. They can't cancel you if you don't let them cancel you. You just say, so what? That is what Kanye has done. So what? Yes, I'm pro-life, and I'm wearing a MAGA hat, and that's it. And, it was funny. Dave Portnoy, the president of Barstool Sports, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's pretty middle of the road politically. I have no idea what his stances are on abortion or whatever, but people try to cancel him all the time, including AOC. And so he's very, very funny. And when people tried to cancel Dave Portnoy on Twitter, he clapped back and he just said, you don't cancel me, I cancel you. Now you're canceled. And he just laughed it off. And it was like, okay, done. I mean, that is the attitude as pro-lifers and as conservatives that we have to take on, and then we're indestructible.
That's right. No one can cancel you except yourself. And I think that's I love that. That's absolutely right. Don't be afraid of cancel culture. Oh, just maybe be afraid of yourself. All right. So let's go over some pro-choice, pro-abortion celebrities who openly talk about abortion, because I think it is important to know who are the like real big drivers, I guess, in Hollywood, in the music world, who push abortion. And I think it's important to follow them, try to get conversations with them. For example, Billie Eilish, I think a couple days ago, shared an Instagram post that Students for Life had, and it's like our biggest post ever. We gained a bunch of followers, and we're all like DMing her now, trying to get a conversation with her going about abortion, because we want to convert her. Obviously, that's our goal.
Yeah.
She spoke and sang at the DNC, right? She did like a song.
Yes.
If I don't know if you can call it singing, but she sung, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she did.
I tuned out.
She's a very interesting character,
yeah.
Billie.
Yeah, Billie is interesting, and she's very young too.
She's a teenager. I think she's just turned 18, so I guess she's a new adult.
Obviously,
I think this is the first year she'll be voting.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah.
Miley Cyrus, that's another big one. She did that whole don't it's especially don't fuck with my freedom it was called. It was a partnership with Planned Parenthood in 2019, and then she posed with that cake where she was licking that abortion is healthcare cake.
Abortion is healthcare. I love that because if abortion is healthcare, why doesn't every OBGYN offer abortion? If abortion is healthcare, then wouldn't it be trying to save the life? Wouldn't you be offering medicine? That's what healthcare is. Mm-hmm. You try to save both people. So that never makes sense to me, those points. And what I love about the pro-life movement is there is literally no argument that you can't debunk that is pro-abortion. And people always say like, abortion is a very scary subject for me to debate. It's too hard. I'm like, no. When it comes to, different touchy subjects, whether you're in politics or whatever, to me, abortion is the easiest to debate because there's no argument for it.
Mm-hmm. I know. No, the abortion is healthcare thing blew my mind, and we hear it all the time from the political left. Like, this is healthcare. They're trying to take away our healthcare. No, like the Hippocratic Oath is you're supposed to not end lives, like do no harm. And abortion, literally, the only way an abortionist knows he or she has success in their job is if a beating heart stops beating. Like, that's success. Like, if that beating heart doesn't stop beating, you haven't done your job as an abortionist. It's literally the taking of a human life, stopping of a beating heart. It's violence. It is the opposite of healthcare because it does intentional harm. Like, that's what an abortionist does. They go to work to do intentional harm against another member of our human family. Like, oh, drives me nuts.
It's always too, in my experience, just talking to people, even, having this job with Turning Point USA, I've met lots of conservatives who say what you hear, I'm sure, all the time of, well, I'm pro-life, but, I still feel like, we shouldn't totally make it illegal. Women still need to have a choice, all these different things. People are always, I feel like maybe 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And then it really is, I think, that turnaround moment in your mind when you find out what an abortion is, what it entails. Because even for me, I was pro-life my entire life growing up. I've always been conservative. I grew up in a very pro-life Christian conservative home. But even I was like, yeah, like killing a baby is wrong, blah, blah. But I didn't still know what an abortion procedure necessarily was, probably fully until a couple years ago. And just listening to that, I would listen to like Ali Stuckey's podcast. Dana Lash has talked about it on her radio show, like in detail. She'll say, let me tell you what an abortion really is. And she walks you through step by step. She says, are you uncomfortable? Good. And I just would listen to that and I would just sob. Because when you hear it and the picture is painted in your mind of how violent it is, it's undeniable that it is so inhumane.
No, we've been doing a lot of studying at Students for Life of that mushy middle demographic of the young women who say, I don't like abortion, I wouldn't have one, but I wouldn't tell my friend not to have one, or like, I definitely wouldn't call myself pro-life. And I'm like, well, obviously you don't know what abortion is, because no one would say, like, I don't like child abuse, I wouldn't abuse my child, but I really can't say what goes on in my neighbor's house. It's fine if they do it.
Exactly.
Like no one would say that, but that's what we say when it comes to abortion. So I think it's a reality of, we don't actually know what happens behind Planned Parenthood's closed doors every single day. Because if you saw an abortion happening on a street every single day, you walked by and you saw, hey, here's the POC lab, and we're just putting together the pieces of the child to make sure nothing was left inside the mother's uterus to cause a septic infection that will kill her. I think people would have a problem with that. I know people would have a problem with that. And that's
love that. That is so, that is just like, I just want to sit with that for a second. If you saw an abortion happening on the street every day, there's no way that you could look away if you just saw it right in front of you, because that's how gruesome it is. And that's what I really like about your podcast too, is it's basically I call it abortion apologetics. I mean, for me, I listen and then I learn new ways on how to argue, how to, debate it and explain it and everything. That's what I think is so valuable about this show too, that I really like that you do.
Well, that's what we try. I am not the best pro-life apologist because I've been told I have a hard time seeing why people could be so dumb. So
relatable queen.
I bring in a lot better apologists than myself, let's put it that way, who can get inside of a mind of another person and have sympathy for where they are thinking, and then explain and challenge them to change their mind. I just want to say, you're an idiot, stop talking until you go to Google and find this out. But apparently that doesn't change people's minds. It doesn't really work. All right. So yeah, and that is why, I mean, honestly, that is why Miley Cyrus, when you think about that abortion as healthcare stunt, that's why they try to use these terms like it's healthcare, it's reproductive justice, because they don't actually want anyone to ever think about what actually happens in abortion. They don't want to,
like tissue, using words like tissue, gray matter, whatever. No, it's brains.
Yeah.
The body, and it's the brains.
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable. And I think we've talked about that in the pro-life movement before, of like, if everyone would just see abortion, they would change their mind. I think it's a challenge though, because there are groups who go out and they take pictures of abortion victims, so aborted babies, and they go to streets and they hold those signs. The challenge with doing that though, and we've actually academically studied this, is that it's almost like it's so shocking to people, it turns them off immediately. Like they just like put it outside of their mind. Like oh my gosh, that person, there's something wrong with that person. How would that person? And then they don't even believe the images that the person is holding up or standing next to. And so it becomes like an immediate credibility problem when you do that. And I think that's the challenge of the pro-life movement is how do you show these horrific images of violence, but also at the same time have credibility with people that they're going to believe what they're seeing and then want to engage, and they don't just hate the messenger, not the message. And that's why I find so interesting. Like one of the polls we did, we found that when political conservatives saw images on the street of abortion victims, they got mad. They got pissed off at abortion. When political liberals saw the images on the street, they got mad at the people holding the images.
Wow. So what is the answer to that then? What did you find out that you should be saying to these people to start a conversation?
I think it depends. I think it shows that liberals and conservatives genuinely come to decisions about important issues differently, and they weight different things differently. I don't know if
that makes sense because conservatives are very facts over your feelings, and we know that the left is very feelings over facts. So it's like, how do you meet in the middle of that?
Yeah, you've got to look up Jonathan Haidt. He has a great TED Talk. He has a book called The Righteous Mind. It's somewhere behind here, and he calls it moral foundation theory. And to me, he calls himself a progressive. It was enlightening because it was like, oh no, this is why liberals literally do think wrong. Like they literally process information differently than I process information. And they do. You're right. It's totally feelings over facts. Like it is all feelings. And I think that's what speaks of what we do at Students for Life and what we try to do on campuses is we have a different approach than the conservative groups would have a lot of times when we're talking about abortion, because our target demographic are liberals, and we're trying to get liberals to engage with our content and to have a discussion, because a lot of times it's belong, believe, behave. You've got to bring them in first to actually have some rapport with you before you kind of put down the hammer and say, now abortion is the world's greatest human rights injustice that we face.
And human rights injustice is no political party. So somehow, abortion has become synonymous with like the Republican Party but that's not necessarily true. I think that once you become pro-life, you end up converting like Kanye. I think, conservatism and pro-life kind of go together because, legislation and all that kind of stuff leans itself to being more on the right. That does help the pro-life movement. However, though, you can be a Democrat and be pro-life.
And I actually think that's how we'll win. I think when we have both Republicans and Democrats fighting over our votes, like seriously fighting for our votes, we'll know we've been successful, because then there'll be a discussion of, well, what policies are better? Like what policies will encourage less abortions, will help the most women? And then we can have a legitimate policy discussion of, and I think that's what is so frustrating sometimes when I talk to political liberals. They're like, well, I'm pro-life, but I vote for Democrats because blah, 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 blah. I'm like, well, you're obviously, if you're voting for a pro-abortion Democrat, then you're obviously not pro-life. Because if you really knew what happened in abortion, even if you care about death penalty, if you're against the death penalty, 34 people died last year, were killed by the death penalty. Over 1 million died from abortion. So like you can't, like you look at the two numbers, like nothing kills more people than abortion. Like that.
Yeah, and it's also, people say, that we contradict ourselves by being pro, if you are on the right, if you are on the political right, that we contradict ourselves by being pro death penalty, but then also pro life. And it's like, no, you're contradicting yourself if you are anti death penalty, but you are pro abortion, because you are murdering. You're saying it's okay to murder or give the death penalty to an innocent child, the death penalty to an innocent child, but not a murderer or even a rapist. I say death penalty for rapists as well. But so that is where I'm like, no, you're the one that's contradicting yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I actually disagree with the death penalty, but I didn't start out in the movement. I actually was pro death penalty, and I've converted to being anti death penalty. And we talk about that another day. But I think that's a great point, because we are always afraid to be accused of being hypocrites. And Hollywood does this all the time, right? They make fun of pro-lifers and the right for being hypocrites. But at the same time, we need to be pushing it back on them. Exactly what you just did. Wait a minute. You're saying I'm not pro-life because I'm for the death penalty. I'm against abortion. And yet abortion kills over 1 million innocent babies. And you're for that. And you think you have the moral high ground over me. Like, what world are you living in? I think that's a great point. I think that's something that conservatives and pro-lifers in general need to be better about pushing back. Like when they call you a hypocrite and say, you pro-lifers are just pro-birth, say, really? Are we really?
Yeah.
And then push back at that and point out their hypocrisy.
And even if that argument is so stupid, and I don't know someone that is pro-life that isn't actively volunteering, even if it's at their local church, volunteering in the children's center, or giving to food banks, or like I volunteer in the foster community with foster children as a child advocate. So when people try to make that argument, it's so dumb. But let's say they were right. Let's just say we really were only pro-birth, only that. Even if that was the case, wouldn't it be better to be pro-birth than pro-murdering an innocent child? Yeah. Even if we're still saying they can live, even if
I'm a hypocrite. Even if I'm a hypocrite and I say abortion is wrong, abortion's evil, and I go out and have an abortion, that doesn't actually invalidate my argument that abortion is wrong and evil, even if I'm living hypocritical life, right? Like, it doesn't change my argument that I'm making, the philosophical argument that I'm making. So yeah, no, Hollywood, and they're like the number one propagators of this myth over and over again, like in movies and all that stuff. How do they portray pro-lifers? They portray us as like closed-minded. They portray us as hypocrites that we don't really care. I'm trying to think of another like Hollywood. Oh, Nicki Minaj. WAP.
Nicki Minaj. Well, that's Cardi. You mean Cardi.
Oh, geez, I can't even know it.
Yes. Well, Nicki Minaj and Cardi B are interesting. I mean, Cardi B just got into it with Candace Owens, obviously, and then they were having a political argument about presidential candidates. And then because Cardi couldn't, hold her head above water in the argument, she just made like a super crude joke about Candace's unborn baby because Candace Owens is pregnant. And so that just shows.
She made a joke about an unborn baby?
Yeah, she said, okay, so Cardi's song is WAP, which probably by now everyone knows what that stands for.
What ass P word.
Yeah. And so Cardi then said like, oh, like it was so stupid. She was just like, oh, your baby is saying, my mama has a dry ass blank. Like, it was so stupid. And then Candace just brought up like, yeah, of course.
That doesn't have any rights and has, is just a blob of tissue and is absolutely meaningless, somehow has conscience and can talk.
I didn't even think about that. That's hilarious. But like, so Candace is just like, of course a leftist is bringing up, trying to talk negatively about my unborn baby. Like, so it was so, she just immediately put the ball back in Candace's court with that stupid argument. But you brought up Nicki Minaj, and Nicki Minaj is interesting because I think, was it 2013, 2014? It was somewhere in there. She came out and talked about how she had an abortion when she was a teenager and how it haunts her. It's haunted her entire life. But Nicki Minaj has also been very pro abortion and donated to causes and Planned Parenthood and all these different things. So what's obvious to me there is that a lot of these celebrities and stuff, they in their own life, their own testimonies would prove to be more pro-life. They've experienced the guilt, the pain, the shame of having an abortion, but they're bought out by Planned Parenthood. And I did not know that. Kristan, I did not, you taught me something with this. Researching what I want to talk about with you for this podcast, I did not even know that Planned Parenthood had an entire wing of their organization dedicated to arts and culture and entertainment, where they have she's like a script doctor, this woman, and in Hollywood, anytime they want to cover abortion or anything, or they're thinking about it, they send her the script, and she literally writes in about abortion for them. But here's the thing, she's writing in about abortion from a pro-abortion, pro-choice Planned Parenthood stance. So it's totally biased, and I had no idea that exists. I mean, it sounds like something from a scary movie, the script doctor that it's so Planned Parenthood, people do not realize, like, I think for people that are on the left, they haven't been red pilled yet. They haven't, they haven't become conservatives. They think that we're nuts and that we're conspiracy theorists when we talk about Planned Parenthood and the pro-abortion industry, how much control they have over our lives, from the stuff we watch, the stuff we listen to, how we vote, candidates, everything they touch. And so when we go up against this monster, that's how important it is. And it's so insidious, and their tentacles are literally in everything in our lives. It's just nuts. So when I saw that there's this woman, and she's doctored the scripts of like only in the last couple of years, over 150 shows.
Yeah, that's what they're bragging about, that they've consulted on 150 productions.
And just think about that, how many that is. And what's also interesting, so that's a lot of shows and movies that they've had their hands in already. And that's only, what that article, I think, was it the Washington Post that did this article? Yeah, and I think it was 2019.
It was the Post magazine. Like, they interviewed, like, Planned Parenthood's proud of this. Like, they're openly championing this.
And that was a year ago. So who knows how many films they've had their hands in since. But what I've also been looking at a bunch of articles that have come out lately, even this year, and especially with that Unpregnant movie, or the one that came out on HBO Max, I think it was, just a couple weeks ago. So the thing about that is, when leftist publications have been covering like Unpregnant and all these shows, they say this is a step in the right direction. We need more shows to cover abortion like this, unemotional. You're not wringing your hands of guilt. That's how they think that it should be covered, and I think that's interesting. They say that it's inaccurate, and Kristan, you can speak to this more than I could, but they're saying it's inaccurate to portray that when a woman has an abortion, she goes through like emotional turmoil.
Yeah, it is a concerted effort by their side to make abortion a callous, a very easy decision that women just say, I'm gonna, pregnancy test came back positive, I'm gonna have abortion. Obviously, if you actually think women feel that way, you've never been in front of an abortion facility at 6 a.m. on Saturday morning when a woman was going in for an abortion. Regardless of how she says her politics are, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, pro-life, pro-choice, when she's in that moment of crisis, it is a crisis. And like, when you counsel women, I don't know if you've ever been in front of an abortion facility, when women are going in, if you try to counsel women going in and you have resources for the Pregnancy Resource Center, you say, can I talk to you for a second? Can I just, can we stop and talk about what you're about to do? You will have women over and over again say to you, I just can't have my baby right now. I just can't have a baby right now. I can't have my baby right now. They don't ever say I can't have this clump of cells, or I'm just going to go and evacuate the contents of my uterus. No woman, very few women, I should say, take this lightly. Every woman is sad. They're looking down. Often they're crying. This isn't something they're on their phone texting their friends, just stopping in for a quickie abortion, be right out, and then I'll meet you later. No one talks about it. And the abortion industry, they have a concerted effort to do that. So you have Busy Phillips, for example, at the Supreme Court. I might have chased her down the street for half a block. And
Did you really?
Yeah, do you remember that went to the Supreme Court here right before COVID? We camped out overnight, and they had this big thing. They bust in, the pro-aborts bust in. They always bust in their people. We had students, volunteers who camped out overnight. They bust in people, and she came in and spoke, and she was screaming and yelling and pointing at people and saying that she literally said she has a beautiful life, a nice house, nice car, nice husband because she had an abortion. It was the most anti-feminist argument ever.
Because that's mutually exclusive. You can only have a happy life if you have no children.
Yeah.
Or whatever. That doesn't even make any sense.
No, and that's that. She was raging about. Screaming, in your face, yelling about it. But so this total anti-feminist argument. But the point she was making, and the point she continued to make on TV interviews and all that stuff afterwards, was her abortion was no big deal. She never had a moment of regret. I would bet you any salary I will ever make in my entire life, there's been moments where she's regretted that abortion. In fact, I can pretty much tell because she's so angry about people because if you don't regret your abortion and you don't give a shit about abortion, then why are you so mad? Why are you so angry at pro-lifers?
I think it's a defense mechanism. And also, let's just play devil's advocate and say, hey, they're women that do have abortions. Sometimes they really are unemotional. It's very easy for them. They go in, they go out, which is what Hollywood wants all TV shows and movies to portray. Even if that was the case, I would argue, I would want them to sit down and do an interview on how much, like we talked about earlier, how much they know about what the procedure actually is. And then if they still feel that way after knowing in detail what an abortion procedure actually involves, then I would be more apt to be like, okay, I was wrong. But if they knew all the details, would they still feel unemotional about it?
Yeah. And a lot of times you'll see from the abortion industry, they'll use studies and say 95% of women express relief immediately after their abortion. Yeah, I totally buy that study because she's in a moment of crisis. She's in it's like a tunnel, right? Like she has tunnel vision. She can't see like any other way out besides like this one thing that's going to she believes will solve her crisis. It doesn't. And immediately afterwards, she can feel relief. But that doesn't mean 2 weeks later, a month later, a year later, 10 years later, she's going to have that moment of regret. And we know this in the pro-life movement, the Silent No More women who, go out on streets, hold signs saying, I regret my abortion, ask me why. And some of those women, I've interviewed them, some of them were decades before something happened. They, got married, tried to get pregnant, were infertile, couldn't figure out why they were infertile. Then, a friend got pregnant and it just triggered them. Like, I can never have this, or this is what I did. And so I think a lot of the studies that you see from the abortion movement, there's like this turnaway study that UCSF, the University of California, San Francisco is like the abortion school. They train all the abortionists, they're the big abortionist training school. By the way, they're committing research where they're dissecting babies they abort with their hearts still beating. They have to abort children who can feel pain. They can't give them anesthesia, and they can't do the normal abortion procedure, which is inserting digoxin that causes a cardiac arrest, a heart attack, kills them, because they need the hearts to still beat so they can harvest their organs for research. Yeah, that's what happens at UCSF when it comes to abortion, that they're aborting children with beating hearts so they can remove the organs from the child while the heart is still beating. That's UCSF. So this institution created this turnaway study. It was crazy because they're using it to justify abortion, saying women don't regret abortion, that, years after abortion, they're not regretting their abortion. But if you actually look at the crosstabs of the study, you'll find that the majority of women actually didn't kind of respond back to the study after they initially participated in it, so basically the women who did respond, there's obviously going to be a bias there because they're more likely to say that they don't, regret their abortion. And so these turnaway studies that you hear, and I think they're going to be using more and more of them because this is something that they're really trying to do. I know in 2016, I don't know if you remember, Sia had this tour, and Sia went along with Planned Parenthood, and it was like this whole I forget what they called it, the exact name of it, but essentially it was abortion is normal. Abortion is good. And that was like their political tour that they were going around in all the swing states talking about. And that was how they were doing it. You'll notice this year they've been really quiet, though. They've been like silent on abortion. The DNC didn't even talk about abortion.
Yeah, why do you think that is?
Because we're winning, kicking their ass. They realize that they are losing on this issue. Like, what we're seeing is a realization that the Democrats have finally figured out that voters are not okay with abortion in all 9 months taxpayer funded. And that's why they are completely silent. Like, I think Kamala, she gave a nod to abortion. She said like reproductive justice or reproductive rights in her acceptance speech, but that was it. Like, yeah, you're not talking about, like, they realize, like, the crazier they talk about what their true, the more they talk about their true intentions, the less voters they have. And they're trying to win over voters in Rust Belt states.
Yeah, all the left has to do is not be crazy. They can't do that. So that's where they lose people on that. Middle people that are even voted for Obama and then voted for Trump, like people that are very, like, they don't vote totally for one party that just depends on the candidate. They are really turned off by all that stuff.
Oh yeah, it's a winning issue. I think that's what's so cool right now, that we can show that we're winning, because I remember when we started Students for Life, like, abortion was like the redhead stepchild of like the conservative coalition. They're like, oh, there's the pro-life people, we have to deal with them. And a lot, when I worked at the RNC, like, I was like openly made fun of by my colleagues for being like the pro-life girl. Like it was bad. And so, but you've seen this whole shift in conservative politics where pro-life, if you're not pro-life, people are like, what is wrong with you? Like, why would you think violence against the preborn child is okay? And so I think that's actually showing that we're winning and that the pro-life movement has done a very good job of being involved. There's an argument, and I don't know if you see this a little bit with your crowd, but we see this a lot in the pro-life movement, especially the youth pro-life movement of, well, politicians are going to let you down. They're going to screw you over. They're going to pledge something and not fulfill. So therefore, I just shouldn't vote. Or I shouldn't vote for the main parties, like, because none of them are perfect. And I should just sit it out, and we're not going to end abortion through politics. And I'm like, no, like, we have laws, and we've proven, like, statistically using science and data that, certain laws that are passed have saved X number of lives. Like, politics does save lives. Like, we're not a political movement. We're a human rights movement. But this is one of the tools in our toolkit is we utilize politics.
I think honestly, and this is very, very controversial for me to say, but I'm going to go for it, is I think a lot of that, the culture and the climate around abortion within the Republican Party has changed because of Trump, because he is the most pro-life president we've ever had. And I would argue that, part of like there never being issues solved within the pro-life movement before is because a lot of Republicans, establishment Republicans, I will say, did not want to touch it because having that as an issue is something they can campaign on. If the issue, just like with the Democrats and Black Lives Matter right now, they need there to be contention in the Black community so they can say, vote for us, we're going to fix it, and then they never do. Just like I think I'm going to say that, before a lot of Republicans would say, oh yeah, we're going to do something about abortion, whatever, and then never touch it. Sure. And they're too scared to touch it because, they'll piss off donors and, PACs and whatever. So I am very excited too about with President Trump is I think he has changed the conversation and culture a lot on pro-life stuff and abortion.
He absolutely has. It's taken it from the country club Republicans to there was always a disconnect. Like, I worked in the Bush campaign, and there was a huge disconnect between the people who ran the campaign and the people who we were trying to get to vote for the president. And a lot of times, and even on Capitol Hill, like I would go to events, and like I really couldn't tell the difference between the Republican and Democratic staffers. I was like,
I was shocked. So interesting. That is interesting, Kristan. That is what I call the conservatee.
That was so frustrating. That was probably the biggest moment of disillusionment I had, because here I was in college. I got involved in the Bush campaign. Like, I got involved in politics because I got involved in the pro-life movement, and I saw politics as a way to enact change. Worked for President Bush, got a job at the RNC, got to DC. I was like, oh, this is going to be amazing. And then I was like one of 3 pro-lifers in the political branch at the RNC at the time. And it's totally not the case now. But I was like the minority getting made fun of for being pro-life. And one of these
millennials and Gen Z have this in the bag if we want it. Yeah. We do have this. We are really on the cusp right now of changing culture when it comes to things like abortion, and we just have to keep infiltrating pop culture, getting more Kanye West in there, and amplifying those voices, using social media. Who cares if you lose 50 followers, if you change 2 people's minds on abortion, and then think of how many lives you could potentially save. Those 2 people tell 2 other people, they tell 2 other people what abortion is and why you should be pro-life. Guys, it is a trickle-down effect. It is not worth it to worry about some nobody from your 9th grade biology class unfollowing you. Who gives a crap? Don't worry about that. We have way too many bigger fish to fry. I hate when people say, like, well, what about that? I'm like, who cares? But I think we need to do that. We need to keep using pop culture to bring up those conversations. Like I said, like what I'm doing on politics. And, you can share when celebrities do talk about abortion, I try to cover that in my show. You can literally share my episodes on your Instagram stories and just be like, oh, look at this as a pop culture show, because that is what politics is. It is a pop culture show, first and foremost, that happens to have a conservative host. So a lot of times, some of the stuff that I cover, some of the celeb gossip and stuff, the stories that I cover, aren't even political. Like if somebody just gets a divorce and it's interesting or whatever, there's nothing political to say about that. But you start building that rapport with your audience.
Right.
You become the source of information for, oh, I want my pop culture news. I want my pop culture news. They trust you. They feel like you're friends. That is when you change their minds. Let me tell you something. You're not going to change. I mean, it does happen once in a while, but usually when you're changing somebody's minds on a controversial issue like abortion or politics, it's a friend or somebody that you've developed a relationship with,
That's
right? Because
right.
they trust you, and then when you say, let me tell you how I feel about this, they're more likely to listen. If I grab a stranger off the street and start barking to them about abortion, they're like, who the heck are you? You know, so you build that. I'm trying to build that relationship with my audience so that when I do bring up things like abortion and stuff, I have their ear to listen. And so that's what we need to be doing. And, you know, besides pop culture too, just culture in general, what we wear and things like that. So I am the global ambassador for Culture of Life.
Yep.
1972, which is a pro-life brand, and 100% of
Started by
the
Students for Life
proceeds.
alum, just whatever.
You said what?
Started by Students for Life alum, whatever.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Both of those. And like, so 100% of proceeds go to pro-life causes. And so I'm their global ambassador for them this year. And so that's been super fun. And, you know, they have like 1972 necklace, which is obviously promoting the last year that abortion was illegal and things like that. So when you wear stuff like that, you're like, okay, when you wear stuff like that, it's a conversation starter.
That's right.
When you wear your all's merch, it's a conversation starter. Well, what does that mean? What's the year 1972 mean to you? Like, is that, you know, did your grandma, or was your mom born that year? Like whatever, like what's the significance? And so those are the things that we can do in culture to start the conversation, start to turn the tide. And oh my gosh,
look my face mask. Now this is a conversation starter.
That's a conversation starter, and also might get you kicked out of some places. But you know what?
This one really gets people really angry.
Yeah, that would get people majorly angry. I love it. I
can't wait till my first flight to DC since COVID, because I'm totally wearing this on.
Yes. It's brave season. That's what I tell conservatives. It's brave season.
I love that. That's so good. No, thank you I think all these tips are super helpful for just what can we do. I also think it's cool to like have a little list of like in your mind of you know, Hollywood celebs or musicians you want to convert. I personally want to convert my dear friend here, Dave Matthews.
Oh, Dave Matthews is a very interesting one. If
I convert him, I can just retire from the pro-life movement. Because like
I love that.
He's a liberal. He cares about the environment. He's anti-war. He's a pacifist. All stuff. Well, great. Then be anti-abortion too. Like add that to, you know, you can't. So that is my goal. I want to meet Dave Matthews. I'm a huge fan. I want to convert him to being anti-abortion. So I'm always looking for like
Swift, because I'm a hardcore diehard Swiftie.
See?
And I have met her twice. Because I used to work in pop radio before I worked here at Turning Point. So I've met her 2 times, and now I'm sure with being so openly conservative, because her team vets everyone that she meets and interacts with, I'm sure never get to meet her again and say anything. But that would be my person.
See, we all should have a person and try to like, you know, DM them or message them or at them on Twitter and try to have a conversation with them. Because I do think, you know, more and more celebs we get out and come out of the closet, say that they're pro-life, have a public conversion. I think the more it mainstreams our movement and shows people that you can be pro-life from all walks of life, and that, you know, we are actually the pro-life generation, and we are the majority. We are not the minority, this out of touch minority like the other side, the liberals try to say that we are. We actually are the majority. In fact, you really don't have to look very far and look at this whole election season to know we're the majority, because the DNC, the Democrats, they're not even talking about abortion anymore because they're so freaking afraid of us. They're afraid of their own issue and their own platform.
Good.
So I think that shows that we are definitely kicking some ass. So any final thoughts that you need to share with anyone that we need to know, how we can infiltrate culture, and, you know, what else we can do?
I think we covered it, but you know, if you want to learn more, follow my show at Poplitics on Instagram, daily show, share it to your friends, and you can also find us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify at Poplitics. I am at Real Alex Clark on Instagram.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex, for coming on. This was a lot of fun, and thank you for making me appear way cooler than I am, because you know all.
You are.
Just the mom. So thank you for coming on. And hey, make sure if you go get your face mask at the Students for Life shop. We got like 4 of them. I think we're the only pro-life organization that's like literally like advertising face masks like nobody's business. So if you gotta wear a face mask, you might as well have a message on it. So
Kristen's face mask says vote pro-life first, right?
Yeah, that's one of them. Vote pro-life first. Make abortion illegal again. Make America pro-life again. I also have just the standard black. I am the pro-life Jen. So just check out the SFLA shop. We also have some really cool defund Planned Parenthood shirts. And if you really want to piss off liberals, wear that shirt on the plane. I've had a lot of conversations. Anytime I go to California, I wear that shirt on planes. So
very
also
spicy.
the Donald Trump one I made. It's You're Fired, Planned Parenthood. So I told the team today, we got to bring that back. So we got to make sure, wear your pro-life shirts, wear it loud and proud, and don't be afraid of someone not following you or defriending you, or they can't cancel you. Only you can cancel yourself. Remember that. So thanks for tuning into this episode of Explicitly Pro-Life. Make sure you share this episode with all your friends, and you hit subscribe, and you follow us on iTunes, Spotify, and everywhere else you get your podcasts. Bye, guys.